beg your pardon. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you very much for coming to take part and listen to this seminar about what universities can do to attract Generation Z. So, just some introductions before we get going. Who am I? My name's Elliott King. I'm the CEO of MintTwist. I am also a visiting lecturer on digital marketing for various institutions, including City University of London. Who's MintTwist? MintTwist is a medium-sized, independent, quite well-established digital agency. Part of what we do is to work with higher education institutions to help them with their student recruitment, specifically via setting up and implementing digital marketing campaigns. So today's conversation, in a moment I'm going to hand over to Colin Cheng, who is a strategic account director inside MintTwist, a long-time friend and colleague and really a subject matter expert. I'm very happy to say that after Colin, we're joined by Ryan. And so Ryan is the head of digital at City University of London, and he's very kindly agreed to share some of the practical things that he and his team are doing in terms of digital marketing to aid their student recruitment. Once Ryan's finished, I'll jump on with an aim to briefly summarize, and then hopefully we can go into a really interactive Q&A. So as we go through, I think there's a system running where you can log some questions, but you'll also have an opportunity just to ask some questions, and we'll make sure we leave some time for that. So thank you very much, everyone. I'll hand over now to Colin.
So, who are Generation Z? And why is it important for us as university marketers and recruiters to understand this new and emerging demographic? There's not yet a clear definition of who Generation Z are. Most demographers will say that they're people born in the late 90s, comparing to millennials, who are people born in the 80s and 90s. Sometimes you will hear the same, they will use interchangeably, but we are seeing very specific differences in their interests, their likes, their user behaviors, and it's really important for us to be able to engage with them in the best possible way in order for us to recruit them at our universities. So, I'm going to go through a bit about them, their interests, behaviors, etc., hopefully give you an idea about who they are and how you can best engage with them. 8 seconds is their attention span. This has decreased from 11 seconds for millennials. And it's not just that they have a short attention span, they're able to make decisions very, very quickly. They are tech innate, so they own 5 devices. They'll own a laptop, a desktop, a smartphone, wearable tech, gaming console, etc. Millennials traditionally had 2. You had your computer, and then you had a phone. And it wasn't even a smartphone. It had buttons, and it was really weird. My sister is 10 years younger than I am, and she has been born into a world where she's never had to hear the wonderful sound of a dial-up modem connection. And I think that's a bit of a shame. But she has lived in a globalized society. She understands that her part in the world is part of a much bigger, globalized, always connected on society. So Generation Z spend 41% of their free time on a device. This has increased from 22% 10 years ago. One of the key defining characteristics of this generation is that they communicate via images and visuals. So emojis is obviously really important. It was word of the year not too long ago. The proliferation of GIFs really indicate just how strong visual communication is for this generation. Millennials traditionally communicated via text. So if you think of things like emails and text messages, and even the first versions of social networks, Facebook, Twitter, all very, very word-orientated. Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook Live, all very focused around visuals. Video is by far the most engaging form of content, and for Generation Z, it is by far the biggest type of content that they consume. So it's really important for us to start placing video front and center of our recruitment process. And one last thing is that they like to create things. So things like vlogging and Twitch, they want to create something and then share it with the rest of the world. But it's not just the changing user behaviors and interests. Actually, we're seeing very, very big differences in terms of how they're searching for university places, university courses. So Google did some research 10 years ago, a couple of years ago, and they found that 10% of all students searched exclusively online for an undergraduate course. This is almost unthinkable for me when I was applying for university, very protracted research phase, go to undergraduate fairs, look at the prospectuses, et cetera, But increasingly, we're seeing more and more students just use online information resources. Some research recently from QS has found that in the UK, prospective undergraduate students value online information more so than traditional offline information. Part of this is the the usage of smartphones. They really are a mobile-first generation. 62% research universities on a smartphone. And this is going to be a trend that we explore furthermore in the rest of the presentation. 90% of 16 to 24-year-olds in the UK own a smartphone. And it's not just the amount of people that have one, it's actually how much they're using it. So double the amount of time is spent on a smartphone compared to a traditional desktop or computer. We did some research looking at the percentage of mobile searches for key university-related search queries. And in 2016, 48% of searches for UCAS clearing happened on a mobile device. The trend is obviously massive. It's going to continue. 2017, definitely going to be more than 50% searching on their mobile phone for things like UCAS clearing. Undergraduate course, the same trend, 16%, 34%. Postgraduate course, also the same trend, so 29%. Some research recently has shown that in the US, 35% of prospective college students actually applied for a course on a smartphone. So they're really starting to embrace this device, this technology, as being the core interaction with us as universities. Part of this is Siri and other intelligent personal assistants. So you have Cortana, Alexa, Google Assistant, etc. There's not a huge amount of data just yet in terms of how much these are being used, but estimates put 10% of global searches to be voice-operated. And so it's not just the technology and devices that people are using that have changed, it's actually how they're searching and researching universities. Estimates put searches on Google and Bing to be around 20 to 25% voice-operated. And so we really need to start considering how this is going to change and influence not just our recruitment processes, but things like our website and our content. So traditionally, people search for things like keywords, so undergraduate course London. They may now be they are now searching for things like, okay, Alexa, show me the top 10 universities for studying engineering in London. Much longer research query. In the US, 71% of 18 to 29-year-olds use some form of intelligent personal assistant. So it's going to be ever more important, ever more used, and really need to start considering how we can reflect our own marketing and our own strategies to take this on board. But what's important to Generation Z? What motivates them? How is this different from other generations? Authenticity is one of the key I guess, angles or aspects that you can really use to engage with this generation. So they connect better with people compared to brands. There is a growing cynicism of marketing, of the establishment, of traditional advertising. Research has shown that young people are more likely to trust an online review from a stranger more than an advertisement, and a really good advertisement, not just a rubbish one. Things like vloggers and scripted reality TV, so Made in Chelsea or The Anyways Essex, really highlight how much they buy into this idea of authenticity. So we would challenge you to try and utilize your student ambassadors, your alumni, even your lecturers. Really give a face to your recruitment and don't just rely on the university brand to try and engage best with them. Data from QS has shown that 41% of prospective undergraduate students in the UK will use some form of online chat room or forum to research universities and try and get different ideas for them. So they really place a strong emphasis on peer-to-peer reviews. So really focus on that. Don't just rely on your academic rankings. Obviously, they're really important, but also include your face of your brand. In the UK, 16 to 24-year-olds, out of all of their time spent communicating, 35% is spent on an instant messaging app. This is a big shift away from traditional means of communication. So email had 14%. Sorry, not sure if you can see everything. Texting had 15%, and social networking was 27%. So we would also suggest potentially offering WhatsApp as part of your student communication process. This isn't to say that emails and letters aren't important, but why not give them the channel that they're spending most of their time communicating in already? Perhaps during clearing, you can have a WhatsApp channel open so that people can ask questions instantly. And just my final point is about connections. So I remember when I was growing up, the friends that I had were the friends at my school. They were the friends that lived on the same street as me. And there was definitely a rhetoric around when I was applying for university. Definitely people would say to me, oh, when you go to university, you'll finally find your true friends. You'll finally find your tribe. I'll finally find people that liked Korean pop music just as much as I did. But thanks to the internet and social media, people can now find their tribes through a simple hashtag. They can have 100 friends across the other side of the world, all through a social network. And so they're already identifying who their sense of self is far younger than I did. And we would suggest trying to acknowledge this as part of your marketing and recruitment and communication strategy. We know that higher education is ultra competitive. Things like Brexit, the mass globalization of higher education, satellite campuses opening up in traditional location heartlands, et cetera, are now really making us more competitive, and everyone's trying to differentiate in the same way. So everyone's trying to talk about their employee graduate salaries, et cetera. So in order for you to try and cut through the mass noise, why not focus on the micro audiences of your courses? Someone studying engineering is going to be very different from someone studying law or nursing. And so why not try to approach your marketing at a very one-to-one direct level as opposed to mass macro audience, university as a brand as a whole, and much more around a one-to-one personal, authentic engagement with prospective students. I'm now going to hand over to Ryan, who's going to give you some real-life examples of how City are putting this into practice.
Which one is it? Solid? Is it that to go forward? Yeah, cool. Hi, so yeah, a bit about City. City is a university in London, has been going since 1894. It's got a reputation for high-quality research, but also highly linked to business and the profession. So we have a kind of prestigious business school called Cass Business School. We also joined the University of London this year. So there's been kind of a shift in our positioning quite recently. Some of the slides I'm going to take you through now will kind of show that through some of the kind of creative that we use in our advertising. So yeah, display advertising is still an important format for us, as well as search. As Colin was saying, you can actually do quite sophisticated targeting with display advertising, actually targeting people on specific sites through their behaviours and their demographics. But with our display advertising, in terms of our position as a university, we want to come across as being a professional university. And we think we kind of do that through our design, keeping it kind of high quality, looking professional. These obviously targeting master's students. So this isn't necessarily going to appeal to 16, 17-year-olds, but it's an effective form of creative that attracts people who may be looking to kind of pursue their career with a master's from City. So these ads can appear across a range of websites on the internet, and the targeting is done using real-time bidding platforms, which really means that they're getting right in front of the audience that they're targeting. Looking at other kind of platforms as well as normal websites, we've been exploring Spotify as a platform now through which we can advertise. And again, you can see here how the kind of creative is up front, and it has that consistency. And it's also one of the key call to actions for us is driving people to our open evenings so they can get face-to-face with our academics. Increasingly, video is an important form of advertising and marketing for universities. So you'll no doubt see that on your own Facebook feeds, more and more content is of video. Facebook actually pushes this up higher in people's feeds now. They do their own native native videos. So we have found that we can post a video on YouTube, post it to Facebook, and it will get tens of views. If you post it natively to Facebook, you'll get hundreds and thousands of views. So they're really kind of pushing their own platform as an advertising platform. And this is a great way to engage people because it's also very mobile friendly. So as Colin was saying, people are attached to their phones, and as part of their research, they can see our Facebook advertising and kind of explore our campus through our video content. There are a lot of sites out there that kind of help students in their research phase. You may have heard of platforms such as What Uni or Postgraduate Search. And we spend a lot of our money and our budget on these sites because they spend a lot of money on their own SEO optimization as well. One of the things is the kind of profile you will see here. So that's a kind of key selling tool for us, talking about the USPs of City. But as Colin also mentioned, these sites make a big thing around peer reviews. And What Uni will go onto campuses every year and survey students about their experience on campus. So we have to be kind of really good at making sure that they have a good experience on campus, so those reviews are authentic. So talk a bit now about responsive design and what that means. As Colin said, people are looking at our content across multiple devices at different times of the day. So we have to make sure that our content, which is delivered mainly by our website, is effective in all those medium. So we use a kind of technical solution called responsive design, where our website will adapt the content depending on the device it's being looked at. But again, we want that consistent experience, and we have to make sure that the right information is displayed at all times. So this is an example of a course page, a close-up version here. You'll see that there's the desktop version, the tablet version, and the mobile version. And we have to make sure the key information that a student is looking for around the course content, the fees is important, the kind of module information, and the entry requirements are all up front. But again, going back to that consistent design and look and feel is the key for us. We also want to make sure that it kind of reflects our brand as well. So I hope you kind of see how the consistency goes from the advertising that I showed you earlier all the way through to the look and feel of the website. So people have a kind of consistent user experience across from our advertising to our social networks to our websites. The social media is not just a way through which we advertise the university, it's also a customer service tool as well, and it's very much a one-to-one experience. So we have to monitor and we have to engage with students on all the social platforms, including Twitter. This is an example of a Canadian student who mentioned us in a tweet about wanting to study in London. He was talking about wanting to study in London and asking us, saying, well, we're a good institution, what's it like studying in London, where can I live? So we have a whole conversation with him online, answering his questions, being informative and adding value, but also being conscious of the fact that he's going to have an audience as well who's going to read his tweet. So we need to make sure that we're helpful and we're answering his questions in a positive way that makes City come across as attractive. One of the quick things that he's talking about is around where to live in London, the cost of London. That's a particularly difficult issue for London-based universities because it is quite expensive to live in London. And so we have to kind of give the options there around halls or accommodation subsidies and bursaries. And also the person who's fed back to him has said, well, if you live actually further outside London and you commute in, obviously accommodation becomes cheaper. So it's really using social media as a customer service tool, providing that information, and it's reliant on us to monitor those channels and properly resource them. And that's really on a global scale as well. So we make sure we're on social media channels in other countries as well. China's a big one for us. Big issue for us is how do we manage a platform that's actually in a completely different language with a completely different character set to which any of my team is fluent in. So we actually use a student ambassador to manage the channel. So there's a degree to which we put trust in that student to be an advocate for the university and to be an ambassador for them as well. And they manage the channel, they answer the queries. We use a third-party agency to help us manage what's being published on the platform as well. So they will kind of monitor what the student ambassador is posting to make sure that there aren't any problems. With social media, you always, from time to time, you can come across crises, so people can flare up and be argumentative. So we want to make sure that that student ambassador has the support to be able to handle those kind of tricky situations. But again, I hope you can see that our brand runs consistently across our Chinese social channels, as well as our advertising and our website materials. As Colin said, email is being used less frequently as a communications tool, but it's still a very useful marketing tool, particularly around the engagement phase. So when we have converted people on our website and we've got their information, they could make an inquiry or they could order prospectus or sign up for an event. We can then communicate with them via email. The reason email is still highly effective is because increasingly emails are read on mobile phones. So going back to that idea around responsive design, we have to make sure that our email templates work well on mobile devices, as well as on your desktop Outlook. And again, this kind of example is here, where someone has requested a prospectus from our website, and we followed that up with an email, so they can not only get the print version, they can download a PDF as well. And there's additional information there, including, again, video content that is really important and expected from the demographic that we're actually targeting now. Finally, that experience that people have when they have applied, they do expect unique content to help them reassure them that they've made the right choice about City. So we have a number of engagement platforms that are beyond our website experience. It provides that tailored content. Going back to the idea of micro-audiences that Colin was talking about, we produce content that's relevant to different courses, to people of different income streams. So we may provide information on bursaries and scholarships, for example. And we'll kind of use this to kind of really sell City. So when they finally when they get their A-level results, they know that they've kind of made the right choice, and they will confirm City as the institution they want to study at. So that's all examples. I'll hand back to Elliott.
Thank you very much, Ryan. So we'll aim to sort of summarize now before we go into a Q&A. But I just thought I'd just repeat a conversation that Ryan, Colin, and I had when we got together to talk about this presentation last week. And we were just musing on where we're at with this whole digital thing. I was a teenager in 1990, which 25, 30 years ago, although the internet had been invented, it certainly wasn't widely used. Completely different world, clearly. But when we talk about Gen Z, who are in effect teenagers now, let's talk about the 17-year-old from just 10 years ago. So just 10 years ago, the iPhone 1 had only just been invented. So let's talk about pre-smartphone age. The average 17-year-old at that time would have been waking up in his or her bedroom, running down to have breakfast, probably watching TV, possibly reading the back of the cereal pack. On the way to work, read a free newspaper. If you're in a car, listen to the radio. Think about today's 17-year-olds. Think about most of us, but particularly the 17-year-olds. They are probably connected to the internet in their sleep via their connected devices. Certainly, the first thing most of them will do when they wake up is check their social media. And they will remain connected throughout the day. And clearly, this is a trend that's moving very quickly, and it's driving significant change. So let's try and sort of summarize what we think the four key takeaways are for today. So first of all, we need to be mobile ready. Everything we need to do, we need to think mobile first. So AI, artificial intelligence ready, actually, all of these things they're intelligent interfaces that allow us to speak to them and ask them questions in a semantic manner, and they will intelligently draw down answers to our questions. That's fundamentally different to what we were doing 5 or 10 years ago, which is typing in a search into a search engine. And that's a trend that's going to change. So being AI / personal assistant ready is very important. The behavioral changes, current aspects of Generation Z in particular are their absolute devotion to authentic messages. And connected with that is personalities. Put your people first. That's going to work well for you, especially with Generation Z. So before we go into a Q&A, for those of you who are sitting there, and I'm sure there are many who are thinking, I would really, really love to sit down and pick Colin's brains for 10 or 15 minutes or half an hour. This can be arranged. Colin is a MintTwist consultant. He would be I can't speak for Ryan, but Colin would be delighted to sit down with you and have a coffee with you. So if anyone wants to do that, please come and see myself, my colleagues Mariam, Alberto, and Beth, and others from MintTwist, or Colin, obviously, he can speak for himself, and we'll be delighted to arrange that. But for those of you who have questions now, I think we'll dive straight into it. Or do we have some questions that are going to pop up? Okay, so we'll start with these then. So what trends are you most excited about for the coming months? Who wants to take this? Ryan or Colin? Can we switch the mic to Ryan? Cheers.
One of the big trends at the moment is the rollout of live broadcast video from, it was initially Twitter and Facebook. Now you can do it on Instagram. And where we've been producing lots of video content, to a degree it's been quite polished. Now with live broadcasting, we're looking at how we can utilize that to sell the university. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll be having our graduation ceremonies, and that's when we can really showcase the end result of a degree at City. Is that's the success, that's what you see. We have student speakers who talk about their life at City and how they've changed and how it's been a life-changing experience for them. to get shots, live broadcast shots on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram of people feeling at their happiest and their best really is great for the university as an asset to sell it and to promote the university. So that's going to be an amazing opportunity, and it's kind of quite timely for us, I think.
Thanks, Ryan. So, Colin, what do you predict will be the biggest challenge for recruiting students in the future?
So I think just how competitive it's going to be. It's not just that it's universities opening up satellite campuses in London or wherever you are, but actually the opportunities for young people for higher education. I guess the competitors there is things like apprenticeships. We did some research and we saw that when the tuition fees in the UK increased to £9,000, the searches for apprenticeships went mad. It went crazy. Like the graphs are basically like this. You have things like MOOCs, so people are looking at different opportunities, different ways to further their career rather than just traditional university education. And so for you to try and get through this, really focus on differentiating yourself with migrant audiences, trying to identify what it is that appeals most to Generation Z and what the marketing messages should be to engage someone on a very, very one-to-one, authentic, personal level.
Thank you very much, Colin. I've just been notified that, unfortunately, we're out of time. So what we would like to do, MintTwist will answer the rest of the questions that are on here, and we'll post them on our blog. So stay connected for answers. But as I mentioned, we're always very happy to chat, and speaking is free. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.